So it's very important, character building, because listening is part of that. And I say this seriously before because you talked about my story. Part of my story of becoming a representative is that you will need to do an assessment. And that assessment is one that you have psychologists and many other people would be there to assess your behavior. In 3 days, you are sort of locked up, and you are between yourself and you are with these assessors and psychologists who are picking signal to see who is Elsie. Does she listen? How does she give feedback? And they can make a determination or not whether you become a representative. So I'm saying this because character building is very important, and listening is a skill that is important for our young generation to also focus on. So it's not always going to be about the hype, it's also going to be about what are they saying, and what can I take from this conversation. So we are by the fireside today to share experiences, to sharpen each other, to draw inspiration, and so let's listen and let's pay attention. I thought I'll use that as an intro. I don't think I'm a very hard woman, but that is part of life. You have to listen. You have to listen. You have to listen. Secondly is what I could pick up, and I'll come to my story. When I was just listening to everybody else who said something, there are a couple of things that resonated, and I wanted to underscore some of those. One is, and I think it came from the lady here who said about service. One is about loyalty to the cause. Loyalty to the cause is part of the character we are talking about. And what is the cause? In our case, the causes can be different things. In my case, is the cost to development. To say that it is, again, I always say, it is paradoxical that we have everything to prosper as a continent. We have everything to shine. We have brilliant ideas, we have everything, yet we have poor people. How do you feel about that when you come out of the streets in UNDP or out of this spaces here and you see people running, trying to make a living? So loyalty to the cause means, what can I do to help? And that is part of the character, because then you are consistency part of character, consistently following that vision of what can I do differently? What can I do differently? I'm in the investing, what can I do differently? And you find different pathways for that. So loyalty to the cause is what this lady talked about, and I just wanted to underscore that. But also loyalty. I have learned one big thing, loyalty to the people we serve. So if I was with you in the University Council, and for that matter, for example, my own boss, I need to be loyal. And sometimes you have very disloyal people. And so loyalty is not only to the cause of what you want to do, but even the people around you. There's a sense of loyalty that you must show to them, whether those above you and those beneath you, loyalty. Loyalty to my team. What is it that I can do? So that came through the conversation, and I wanted to underscore that sense of loyalty. The other thing that came through the conversation, and I know somebody talked about, is discipline. And he was hitting back at the politicians, but it's not only the politicians, it's also discipline amongst ourselves. It struck me today, and again I said, oh my goodness, when drivers are driving the opposite side of the road, every time I have butterflies in my stomach, I feel there's going to be an accident. And I'm asking myself, but they know what they are doing is wrong, but they're still doing it. And sometimes we all participate in it, whether you're taking the border and it's going on the opposite direction, but you're enjoying it because you're going faster. And so what is that discipline that we are talking about? And I think that discipline needs to cut across everything. But just in the interest of time, in terms of my own story, I grew up in Ghana. I was brought up I asked my son to come in actually today, so I don't know who he is. He's a 7-year-old running around here. I was brought up by a single mother, and we grew up in the ghettos of Accra. So there's nothing posh, it's a hall and a chamber. And we have, African families, there are many of us. So my mother used to take care of her sister's children. I think at the time there were about 14 of us in the hall and chamber in Accra. There were no fancy, beautiful showers or anything. You know what I mean. I don't want to give the deep details. So, and we grew up in areas where we had very restricted expectations of ourselves, because it's not as if you had a career student next to you who you draw inspiration from, because we're all in the ghetto, everybody's struggling. So that desire, and it's very important, I think, at that part of character building, the desire to get out of that space, the desire to say, how can I get out of that space and become something? How can I come back and help that community? That desire is one that propelled me. And I think that's what I've always carried with me. A sense of fire in the belly to say, I need to do something different. I think that environment also challenged me to do some more. So I think character building, as we have those conversations, is also a desire to do something different. And I think that desire is very important. I think in terms of how, and my story is captured, so I'm not going to go into every step of the way, but I've always challenged the status quo, and I've always gone out there to try to find opportunities. Somebody talked about opportunities, being opportunistic. The other thing I think I've learned in this journey is having the right people around you, because that shapes character as well. I choose my friends, and I'm deliberate with who I go out with. And when I talked about some of my stories, I put them in the form of Ds, because I always like things to stick into people's mind. And I just used a very simple word saying dating. I didn't mean dating a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's more about the network around. So I draw inspiration around, in terms of character, around people around me. That helps to not only, they said iron sharpness iron, because you get to challenge each other, but there are days that you feel, oh my God, I'm just tired, and then you get inspired by your friend to say, we have not arrived yet, we have to move forward. And so having the right people around you shapes character, and I think just this, in terms of lessons learned in my career and where I've been today, to have the right people. So even in the university here, you must not just go out with everybody. Some people will kill your vision. So you need to have people who are there to support you and to take you to where you want to be. Determination is the other thing. Determination is the other thing. I think it also came out through some of the conversations here. To make sure that you are determined, and you're determined throughout in very difficult times as well. Character is like a tree, and the shadow is the reputation. And many a time people look at the shadow, but the real thing is the tree. In other words, what forms you is the most important thing, and I think that's what I'm alluding to. So, what's the place of values? I think the place of value is, just to connect to what Lorna has said, is the one that will take you far in whatever thing that you're going to do. And there are a couple of things that, and we can derive values from our culture, our religion, and everything, but not everything in our culture works. Because when we were growing up, and you are in your village or in environment, they say don't look at the elder, just look down. Look down, because when you look at them too intently, you're being rude. But then when you come to the real world, you realize that people assess you whether you look them in the eye, and being assertive is very important. And so you realize that value not necessarily is not going to help us. And so there are things in our culture that works, and there are things in our religion that works, and I think we need to look into those. I recall when I was growing up, where our parents and our families used to tell us about the Anansi stories. So there's this mythical sort of spider, and they will always end with a moral around that. How Anansi became a wise person, how Anansi did this, and every time we look forward to the Kyoto by the fireside. And it has stayed with us. And so culture has provided a lot for that, because of the folklore, the proverbs, and many more. And I have said that in our age where things are moving so fast that you don't sometimes know the books that your children are reading, I've gone back to those for my son. How did the crocodile get scales and things like that? Because they always have a value there, and it invites. So I think we need to look into the culture, what works, and what we can use. Having said that, there are a few things that, in terms of values, and that I've learned about, that I feel is very important, because it's not only going to come from the culture or religion, it's also going to come from you. One is excellence. I think many a times we settle for mediocrity. Something half-baked, let it go. And I know some of my staff members are here and they're rolling their eyes because they know they send something to me 15 times, I'll send it back to you until we get it right. And sometimes there's a sense of frustration because, oh my goodness, I've sent this thing 3 times. But I'm building character. I want it that when you go somewhere and they put your document down as Harriet or Beatrice or Rachel, nobody can touch it. Because we must show that as Africans we can excel. And so sometimes it's also going to be your ability to receive feedback. Because sometimes you can be like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore, look at this. But your ability to take feedback, you build character. Because now it's okay, I did this thing, maybe I should do it this way, I should do it this way, I should do it this way. And then increasingly, you're building capacity and you're proving yourself as somebody who can be, when you write your document or if you do something, nobody can touch it. Somebody talked about hard work. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about. Excellence and not settling for mediocrity. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of values is one of the things is that always keep in mind that our legacy is not to ourselves. Our legacy is not to ourselves. In other words, what you leave behind, it's not just what you have gone through, our legacy. So when you keep that in mind, then the question then is, what then can I do differently? And hard work is one of those values. Hard work. And I recall my grandmother told me something, talking about culture. And she said, when you die, your hands are the ones that get rotten first. And I was just like, what? Is it true? And so you better use it when you're alive. And I don't know whether she was just doing that to threaten me or to make sure that we get to work hard. But I think it always stayed with me, and so hard work is going to be one. And so one of our interns or our volunteers, and Rachel is not alone, when they come as interns, and some of them, when we do have resources, we hire them back as volunteers, or we give them jobs as consultants and others. And many a times we don't tell them, but it's those that have proven themselves to have worked hard. Is one that we say we need to keep an eye on this one and bring them back. So sometimes it can be very subtle. You don't see. And I recall in my own space, I had gone to Addis Ababa once to work as an intern, and I had left. And I think I gave my all to the point when after I think a year or so, they started looking for me. And in those days there were no internet or emails or anything. And they tracked me all the way to Ghana. Somebody went to look for my mom and said, there was a lady who worked with us in Addis Ababa a year ago. We are looking for her. We understand you are the mother. Where can we find her? And I think hard work paved way in terms of people finding you. So that's the place of some of the values. Hard work, excellence, but also simple things like keeping to your word and promise. It's character. Last week I had somebody who had to come and do something for me at home, and I called him myself. I said, can you come? They said, yeah, I'm coming at noon. I said, okay, I'll wait for you. Exactly at noon. I said, yes, I'm coming at noon. At noon, nothing. Nothing. And after today, they never called back. And I told myself, and I didn't tell them, but I said to myself, I'm not going to call them back again. And because I knew they didn't just care. And two, I'm not going to give them network. So keeping to your word becomes important. And consistency in that space. So these are some of the things I think I could say very on top of my head. But again, we do have other colleagues as well. I know some of my senior colleagues. Beatrice, are you not senior in age? Beatrice is my staff member, but she's older as well. And she's been gymming in the office. On Wednesdays, we have this wellness space, and consistently, she's been on that space, always doing the gym. So maybe to say, why has she at 57 or 58 years still gymming, and even at the end of the day when we're all tired and we want to go home, she's been consistent. So maybe you can give some inspiration, Beatrice, just briefly, maybe if the moderator would want to permit that.
Yeah, we'll get to Beatrice in a moment, but I just wanted to recognize that we're joined by the Guild President, Mr. Robert Maseruka. So I guess that we know who is popular now, right? From the clap of hands. Right. The joke is that, yeah. Then we're joined by the University Secretary, Mr. Yusuf Chiranga. Oh, okay. That's very popular. And also Professor, and a former Guild President. Yes, yes. And Professor Sarah Sadi, who has also joined us. Thank you so much, everybody. And Beatrice, thank you so much for the old club, right? We all belong, right? Okay, guys, so let's hear from you. We've had so many thoughts and insights. We started off with conversations or aspects from the young stars, then we had conversations from the generation. So let's see who had put up their hands. There's one here. Carol. Okay, you as well. And then you.
Greetings.
Rona, Mr. Sarah, Elsie, thank you for providing the opportunity for us to speak. How are you, everybody? I wanted to link the response to what Lona said, the issue of choice. I also talked about the issue of purpose, but also the issue of values. I think as we are growing up, the value of respect for each other, as women and as men. We grew up as girls. We are 6 girls amongst 4 boys. But my mother, she was a single parent. She trained us to respect each other. In our home, the big brothers did not treat us as young sisters. They treated us as equals. So I grew up knowing about inclusion, respect for each other, equality. And so I'm not surprised that even when I was supposed to go for postgraduate training, I chose to do a master's in women's studies. One, because I needed to bring out what I've been nurtured to do. So the choice you make as an individual, but also when you are in an organization, I'll speak about what I do in the organization, but also the purpose as an individual and the purpose that you can follow up when you are in an organization. So what I would want to share with the young people, I know many times, especially the male students, and they don't want to hear about respect or equality or inclusion. We have talked about all the different values and all the different things that make character. But if you have a character which does not even respect your sister at home, for even minor things, you finish to eat and you want her to take your plate to the kitchen. You want her to make your bed. You want her to do everything because you are the boy in the home. And actually the parents are also training you to do that in some ways.
So part of the character, negative culture.
Those are some of the negative aspects of our character. So we have to shift those kinds of negative mentalities that we have. The same with the girls in the room. Sometimes we also carry those mentalities, especially when you are the older child and you have the young brothers. You actually become the big brother, in my case, who would be thinking that, oh, they are young, they have to do everything for me. So we keep shifting the goalposts whenever we are in those positions of power or responsibility, and we want to downgrade the other person. So build a character which respects equality. Build a character that respects everybody. We are equal human beings. I don't want to be you, you don't want to be me, but respect me as I am, and I will respect you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. Really well put. Thank you so much.
My father and mother had 10 of us, and then in 1985 my mom passed, my dad remarried, and we have another set. I have a set of siblings, 4 after me, so it's a big family. And so every year, before my dad passed, every year
either at Christmas or at Easter, would all gather back home. Everybody. So we were so many who would come, gathered together as a big family. It would be about, I remember we planned for up to about 100 people. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And it was so much fun. We would camp, we would go with tents, we would sleep everywhere. And then in the evenings, after dinner, we would sit around the campfire. And my father would tell us stories of his time. And it was so heartwarming to hear his experiences. He studied, he would walk for days to go to school. He was coming from Ukonje and was studying in Barra, so they would walk. And hearing those stories of how they would walk for days, not knowing where they were going to get a meal, they would just, when it would get dark, they would branch off to a hut or a house. And in those days, people would just open their homes to passerby. So they would welcome them in the house, give them milk, water to have a bath, feed them, and then in the morning they would pack them with food on their onward journey. And just hearing those stories and the values that undergirded our society, and then seeing where we are now, there are so many tips that we learned from him. He participated in the Second World War, and there were stories about that. And so just sitting around the fireplace and picking up stories from the older generation, you pick up values. He would tell us of his time in the civil service, how even when government gave him money and he misplaced like 5 shillings, he would turn the house upside down looking for that 5 shillings and drive distances to take the 5 shillings back to the accounting officer. And I was thinking, who would do that now? You just say, I spent it on something, and we just let it go. And so this gives us an opportunity to learn from each other. Obviously, he would also ask us our opinions on things, and we tell him. So he was also learning from us, learning how phones work, the different gadgets that are now available. And so this creates an opportunity for interaction, from learning from each other. Definitely, I learned a lot of values